Archfænd by Philip Pearson. Chapter 1. In the Arms of Death. Darkness consumed the forest like an endless mouth, broken only by fleeting shards of moonlight piercing through skeletal branches. Each breath came sharp and cold, misting in the freezing night air as Freyja ran. Her boots barely touched the damp earth as she sped between the trees, faster than mortal eyes could follow. Branches snapped underfoot, and the shadows warped around her, swallowing the pale glow of her wings. She clutched a small, swaddled bundle to her chest. A child no older than a few days, his tiny horns pressing gently against the cloth. She moved like a fleeting ghost, wings flaring briefly as she leapt across a chasm, a dark wound splitting the earth below, before folding tightly against her back as she vanished into shadow again. Despite her speed, despite the instinctive grace of a Valkyrie, the all-female order of warrior angels she had once belonged to, fear clung to her heart like frost on glass. Strands of dark brown hair clung to her damp forehead, and her iridescent blue eyes flicked skyward, scanning crimson-stained clouds for shapes that didn't belong. The islands of the heavens, the home she once knew, now loomed above her like silent war drums, each jagged silhouette stirring a fresh wave of panic. A mysterious red aura creeped between the clouds with malicious intent. "Not yet," she whispered hoarsely, clutching the child closer as if her words alone could shield them. Not yet. Far away, yet impossibly close, a figure watched. The Archon of Death stood atop an endless expanse of withered cliff, his presence commanding the silence of the void. His robes, deep black and lined with faint ethereal blue patterns, hung heavy like funeral shrouds, their edges fraying into smoke that curled and dispersed into nothingness. Bone ornaments and faded feathers adorned his shoulders and sleeves, swaying gently in an unseen breeze. His skeletal face, carved from a flawless pale ivory, bore an eternal grin. Deep within his hollow eye sockets, faint pinpricks of ghostly blue light flickered. Distant, ancient, and unyielding like dying stars. "Another chase, another mother, another child," he intoned, his voice reverberating like a distant avalanche, heavy with timeless sorrow. "I grow weary of this cycle, of their fear, of their hate, and yet, here we are." His bony fingers, adorned with fragments of metal rings and woven charms, twitched faintly before disappearing back into the folds of his sleeves. His gaze remained locked on the fleeing angel below, distant yet all-seeing. His sigh like the final breath of a dying world. Fate spins its cruel web. The wind had settled into a low whisper through the canopy. Rustling, brittle leaves that clung stubbornly to skeletal branches. Freyja's boots slowed to a stop as she stumbled into a small clearing, the pale moonlight spilling over her like liquid silver. She pressed her back against a massive tree trunk, the rough bark biting into her shoulders as her wings folded tightly behind her. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her arms clutching the tiny swaddled child against her chest. For a brief moment, the world was quiet. Then a voice echoed softly in her mind, distant but firm. "Freyja, I can't make it to you. I'm being held back. You need to go ahead. You know what must be done." Her lips pressed into a hard line, her brow furrowing. She turned her face slightly upward as if searching for him in the darkness. "Asta, no. You should be proud. He deserves to be seen for what he truly is." The voice sighed, the weight of centuries carried in that single sound. You're right, he does deserve that, but the world isn't ready to see him. Freyja. It may be a long time before their hatred fades, if it ever does. Please, protect him the only way we can. And her wings sagged slightly at her sides. Her knees buckled, and she lowered herself to sit at the base of the tree. The baby stirred in her arms, a faint whimper escaping his tiny lips, but he did not cry. "Asta," she whispered, her voice breaking like glass. But no answer came. The connection had gone silent, leaving only the encroaching hum of the oppressive red aura, clawing at the edges of her mind, and the out-of-step thud of her heartbeat. For a long moment, she simply sat there, clutching her son as if she could shield him from the world through sheer will alone. Then, with trembling hands, she lifted him slightly in her arms, cradling his tiny face in her palm. "I'm so sorry, little one. I hope one day you will understand." Her other hand rose slowly, glowing faintly with a soft silvery light. The luminance grew brighter, casting shimmering rays across the clearing, making the shadows dance as if in mourning. The light touched the baby's small horns, his ashen skin, the faint shimmer of traits that marked him as something other than human. One by one, those features began to fade, dissolving like frost under the morning sun. His horns smoothed into soft skin, his colour dimmed, and what remained was the face of an ordinary, fragile human child. Freyja's tears fell freely now, landing on the baby's face like tiny stars. Her shoulders trembled as she choked back a sob, her hand lingering over his forehead as if she could undo what she had just done. "You are still you," she whispered through her tears. "No matter what they see, no matter what they tell you, you are still you." The magic faded, leaving only the faint smell of ozone and the heavy stillness of the forest. Freyja leaned her forehead gently against her son's, her tears tracing new paths down her dirt-streaked face. For a moment, mother and child were still, wrapped in fragile silence beneath the uncaring sky. The town was still. Pale moonlight spilled across slanted rooftops and stone-paved streets, painting the world in shades of silver and shadow. Lanterns flickered weakly in iron sconces, their light barely cutting through the dense chill of the night air. Somewhere far off, a dog barked once, then fell silent. Freyja moved like a phantom through the narrow alleys, her wings snug against her back, her brown hair veiled by the hood of her tattered cloak. Her boots barely made a sound against the frost-bitten stone streets as she weaved between shadows, clutching her sleeping child tightly to her chest. She paused briefly at a corner, her iridescent blue eyes scanning the empty streets. There, a building at the end of the lane. Its stone walls rose stoically against the night, and a faint golden light seeped from a stained glass window. A temple. Moving swiftly, she approached the temple steps, her breath misting in the cold air. The carved wooden doors loomed above her, worn but sturdy, flanked by flickering lanterns. Slowly, she knelt on the cold stone ground, her knees trembling as they met the icy surface. "You'll be safe here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They'll take care of you. Someone will love you the way I wish I could." Her lips quivered as she leaned down, pressing her forehead gently against her son's. His tiny chest rose and fell in soft, steady breaths, utterly unaware of the weight of the moment. A faint light began to shimmer in the space between them, a soft, golden luminance that seeped from Freyja's fingertips and wrapped around her son like threads of silk. The magic hummed faintly, resonating in the stillness of the night. "Creator, please make this work," she whispered, her tears slipping free and catching in the radiance of the magic. I wish for my son's true love, so he may find his way, so he may never feel alone in this wicked world." The radiance began to grow brighter, casting faint rays of light across the square. But then, "Hey, is someone there?" A voice cut through the silence, sharp and sudden. Freyja froze, the radiance vanishing in an instant. Her head snapped upward, her eyes locking onto the shapes of two figures. A young couple emerging from a side street, their lantern casting faint, wavering light against the temple's stone facade. The man squinted into the darkness while the woman clutched his arm, her face shadowed by the lantern's glow. They couldn't see her clearly yet, but they were close enough to ruin everything. Freyja's body went rigid, her instincts flaring to life. She pressed a trembling kiss to her son's forehead, her tears flowing freely. "Forgive me, little one," she choked out. In one fluid motion, she set the baby carefully on the temple steps, adjusted his swaddling to shield him from the cold, and stood. Her wings unfurled with a sharp snap, catching the faint glow of the lantern light. The couple gasped, stumbling back as Freyja crouched low, her wings coiling with power. Then, with one tremendous leap, she shot into the air. The wind howled around her as she climbed higher and higher. Her wings beat furiously against the freezing air, each stroke carrying her farther from the fragile warmth of the church and the tiny child she had left behind. She didn't dare look back. If she did, she knew she wouldn't be able to keep flying. Miles away, Freyja descended, her wings faltering as she landed heavily in a small, frost-bitten field beside a crooked farmhouse. Her knees buckled and she fell to the cold earth, her chest heaving with silent sobs as she buried her face in her hands. The sky above was a dull, endless crimson, an unblinking eye watching as a mother's heart shattered in the quiet of the night. After several seconds, she forced herself upright, her legs trembling as she staggered toward the nearby farmhouse. The door creaked open under her touch, and she slipped inside, placing a hand on a support beam, bracing herself against the weight of everything she'd left behind. The cold winds howled outside, but within the cramped, dimly lit room, a silent tension held her in place. "Asta?" Her voice barely broke the stillness. "Do you hear me?" The voice that crackled back through was distant, strained. "Freyja, I'm sorry. I'm not going to make it. Riff, is he safe?" Her heart sank. "Yes, Riff is safe." The brief silence between them felt like an eternity. Then, just as quickly as it had come, the connection faltered. "Freyja," Asta's voice cracked. A long sigh on the other side, but it was drowned out by the deafening silence of the room. The weight of his absence began to settle over her chest like a boulder. Her breath caught as she heard the unmistakable sound of soft footfalls approaching. In an instant, the doors burst open, light from the lanterns outside spilling into the small barn. The sharp light revealed silhouettes of 4 angels, their white wings gleaming with purity, their armor, equally white and trimmed with silver, mocked an attempt to match the splendor of their wings. Their faces hardened with a singular purpose. Freyja didn't need to look to know what they sought. You, The leader's voice rang out, low and furious. "We finally tracked you down." Her hand twitched instinctively at her side, but she remained motionless. The wings on her back twitched, her pulse quickening, but she would not allow them to see her fear. "Where is he, Freyja?" The second angel stepped forward, his wings unfurling in anger. Freyja stood tall despite the exhaustion that clung to her limbs. "I will never give him to you." Their eyes flashed with fury, but they only circled her, their wings casting shadows against the walls. The rooms seemed to shrink as they drew closer, their movements calculated, predatory. Freyja's chest tightened. She was alone. Alone in this fight. The weight of her decision pressed heavily on her heart. Her allies had given her everything, and she could not, would not, betray them. Not now, not ever. With a sudden, fluid motion, Freyja flung off her cloak. The room seemed to pause as the garment fluttered to the floor. Her Valkyric battle crown shimmered in the dim light, its intricate feathered design a gleaming silver, forged by a master artisan. Her diplomatic vestiges, white with intricate blue patterns and gold threading, clung to her powerful, womanly warrior frame. She stood there, a vision of strength and defiance, her bronzed skin kissed repeatedly by the sun, glowing with an inner fire. Her arms and legs were adorned with gleaming silver braces, the metal seeming to hum with power, while her wings, sharp and silver, arched dramatically, casting shadows across the room. Her eyes, iridescent blue, gleamed with the cold resolve of someone who had made her choice. "I will never betray them," she hissed, her voice rising in a fierce battle cry. For a moment her enemies hesitated, but only for a fleeting moment. Then they struck. The first blow came from the left. One angel lunged, her sword cutting through the air, a shining arc aimed directly at Freyja's chest. Freyja twisted, her own wings snapping out to block the blow. The collision sent a shockwave of pain down her spine, but she recovered swiftly, her arms crackling with silver energy. She moved faster than they could track, a blur of celestial fury. Her wings slashed across the air, blocking another strike, and with each movement she unleashed a flurry of counterattacks, graceful, fluid, but deadly, as she clutched two luminescent daggers in each hand, one held forward, the other reversed. The angels faltered as her power surged through her, their shock evident, but the numbers were against her. Her exhaustion was beginning to show. Her breath was ragged, her strikes slower, her movements stiffening. They saw their chance. The third angel lunged forward with a swift, decisive motion, and Freyja barely had time to react. The cold, silver blade pierced her side, the pain ripping through her as she cried out, her vision blurring with the force of the strike. Before she could regain her balance, the fourth angel closed the distance. His weapon, a massive spear, stabbed through her chest, pinning her to the chair behind her. The world spun around her, her blood pooling beneath her, yet her defiance remained. "Where's the child, Freyja?" The leader's voice was low, almost a growl, as he leaned in close, his burning gaze never leaving her. She refused to let them see the fear, the pain. Her lips curled into a defiant smile, blood dripping from the corners of her mouth. "You won't find him," she spat, her voice hoarse but filled with conviction. "You violated the neutrality. You think I'll just hand him over?" The angels exchanged glances, their disgust palpable. The leader raised his sword high, but Freyja cut him off before he could strike. She rasped, her eyes flashing with silver fire. "You will never find him. He looks like any other human now. Weak, fragile, hidden. You will never find him, not unless you start hunting down every last human in this world." The leader's face twisted in fury, his eyes narrowing as he brought his sword down slowly, cutting into her again. This time, the pain was excruciating, and Freyja gasped, her body shuddering in agony as the blade sank deeper, her vision dimming. "You think Imperia will protect you?" he sneered, his words cold. "You think your little bastard is safe?" Freyja's chest heaved with each laboured breath. You don't understand. You never will. Pandemonium will hunt you down, one by one." Our last words echoed in the room, the silence that followed as heavy as a tomb. In one slow, vicious cut, a straight-edged knife slid through the flesh of her neck. Her eyes wide as blood sputtered forth from her mouth, the gaping wound yet another crimson waterfall, lethargically spilling forth. A sinking sensation of regret. She could do no more. With that, they withdrew their weapons, leaving her impaled and broken. Freyja's wings sagged behind her as they turned and left, their cold presence vanishing into the night. Her breath came in shallow, desperate gasps as her vision darkened. The last thing she heard was the sound of their footsteps fading into the distance. Then, the world went silent. The solitary figure of the Archon of Death stood. For centuries he had watched the weight of inevitability upon him. Yet now, as the echoes of Freyja's final moments reverberated through the cosmos, the composure that had once been his hallmark shattered. A low, primal growl rumbled from his chest, something ancient and furious rising within him. His gaze, fixed on the far distance, was full of an emotion not often associated with one who is tasked with shepherding the souls of the dead. "Enough," he muttered under his breath, his voice cold but tinged with a rare fury. The magic that surrounded him began to stir. Necromantic energy crackled in the air, thick and tangible. He raised his hands, the bones of his fingers twitching as they traced an ancient, dark incantation. His voice grew louder as he spoke, the words inhuman in nature, weaving through the space around him with unnatural power. "If there must be hate in this world, then I'll sunder you all." He hesitated, as if taking a breath. The Archon's voice, though calm, carried an underlying rage, each word infused with a purpose that would rip apart the fabric of the world. "To save you." As he spoke, the very air around him grew still, heavy, as if reality itself was holding its breath. In the distance, countless corpses began to stir. A grotesque symphony of the dead awakened, human, elf, lizard men, Tengu. Every race that had once walked the world now slowly rose from their graves, from tables at mortuaries, from the cold, damp earth itself. The streets of cities, once bustling with life, were now filled with the horrific sights of the undead. Zombies staggered through villages, torn and ravenous as they attacked the living. The world, once teeming with vibrant life and bustling communities, was now flooded with death. The Archon's will was absolute, and death was no longer confined to the realms he governed. "Don't worry, Freyja. Don't worry, Asta. Your son will be safer in this world than the last." His words were bitter, cracking like dead wood. He believed them, or perhaps he needed to believe them. But even as the undead consumed the living, even as nations crumbled beneath the weight of his decree. Doubt seeped into the cracks of his resolve. The world he had reshaped in his own image was no sanctuary. It was a grotesque reflection of the hatred he so despised. A hollow, endless hunger, devouring everything in its path. For a long moment, the Archon stood motionless, surrounded by the crescendo of screams and the wails of the damned. He had acted with purpose, with conviction, yet deep within the hollow of his chest, something fragile and distant whispered, "Was this the only way?" But it was too late now. The world had been sundered. The Archon of Death turned away from the carnage he had unleashed, his cloak trailing like smoke as he vanished into the shadows, leaving the world to drown in its own blood. As so perished the last just angel.